We are live. What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Erik, and this is Erik Bets Fights. It is UFC 274 week, y'all. If you're not excited about that, I don't know what to do for you. We've got a banger of a card coming up this week. And we've had card after card lately with not a whole lot of breaks. You know me, I get excited for every fight card. I don't even care if it is a bad card, so to speak. I enjoy them all, but yeah, we're getting a hell of a lineup of great fights here with several title fights, and then also I tend to love the cards where we get one of the complaints I've seen about this card is that the UFC is kind of marching out some corpses here that maybe should have retired at this point. I love the nostalgia of that. I really do. I love to, I don't want to see a fighter fight past the point where it's safe for them to be doing so. But I mean, that's always for them to decide. I don't want to see fighters get hurt or anything like that, of course. But at the same time, to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, I paid for the Golden Boy MMA card where Tito fought Chuck. I bought that pay-per-view, so I have a problem. Like, when I just, I've been following the sport for a long time, and when some of the old time fighters, the guys from the old days, when they're still out there doing their thing, you're not necessarily going to get real high quality fights out of it, but I don't even care. I just get the nostalgia factor is there for me, and I get really excited. But anyway, I do need to move a little bit quickly tonight because I've probably never mentioned this before. My wife is also a content creator, and we use the same office to do our stuff. And she has her podcast tonight in about an hour and a half, and she co-hosts with several other people, so they can't just jump on and do it whenever they want like I do. They actually have to like schedule it, so I got to be done with the room in a little over an hour so she can use it. But anyway, so we won't waste any more time. Let's go ahead and recap how our bets went for the last card, UFC Vegas 53, Font versus Vera. We'll just go through the bets a little bit there. It was a small losing event. Let me see here. I'm actually going to be trying to share my screen and look at my notes and I'm a boomer pretty much, you guys here, so I'm trying to get all computery, so we'll see how it goes, but bear with me. So yeah, first of all, we had 2 units on Jake Collier at plus 110. I liked that bet a lot. Even with the way the fight played out, I liked that bet a lot. Obviously, I didn't like it with the way the judges saw it, but I thought Jake Collier won the fight. It played out pretty much the way I thought it would. I thought Collier would have the better volume and would just be the more active party and would probably land more, and that's pretty much what happened. But Arlovsky got, one thing that you have to take into account when capping Arlovsky fights is just that he's Arlovsky and people love him, and that includes judges, and I didn't take that into account, and I paid the price. So next up, we lost 2 units on Tristan Connolly. That was just a bad bet. That was just a dumb read on my part. After I finished the tape study there, I was actually kind of like, I was considering Connolly a small favorite. So then when I pulled up the odds and saw him at 115, I put a unit on that right away. And then when the line moved that much up to 159, I was like, I don't know if I trust this spot enough to put more on it. But I was like, man, if I liked him at plus 115, how do I not put a little more on it at plus 159? So, and yeah, that was just a bad bet. I should have stayed away from that one. It's not, it's not like he looked terrible or anything, but he definitely, he wasn't the right side there. Next up, Gabe Green. That was a bet I was pretty confident in. I put 2.2 units at minus 110. That was one of those spots where it's like line S is going to be dangerous early, but if he's not able to find the knockout, Gabe Green should be able to take over, which is pretty much what happened. So we did okay on that one. And then finally, as far as straight bets, Gina Mazzani. I put 2 units on Gina Mazzani. You guys, I did see a lot of cappers betting Gina Mazzani, so I felt a little better about it. But man, I think I even said in my breakdown video, she was like one of my most confident picks on the card. And I should know better. I still think that, like, stylistically, that was a very winnable fight for her, and she should have won that fight. It just didn't play out that way. Maybe I'm just doing sour grapes here, but yeah, I should have known better than to trust a fighter like Gina Mazzani, who we know falls apart. But she didn't even come out with, like, I thought she was going to come out and wrestle. I was like, she's going to be able to take Shanna Young down. She's going to be able to hold her down. She didn't even do that. Like, I at least thought that I knew what she would try to do, and that if she tried to do that, she would be successful, but she didn't even do what I thought she was going to do. So yeah, it was just a bad bet. Next up, I put 1 unit on the Mearshart Yatko fight to go over 1.5 rounds. Kind of a steep price there at minus 205, but I really didn't see that fight ending early, so I felt pretty good about that one. So we won that. Then we've got a parlay, Feely and Dawson. Andre Fili obviously ended up losing there. Dawson came through, but luckily I've got a little hedge coming out or coming up as we get down the slate here. And then I put half a unit on Collier by decision because, like I said, I felt pretty good about Collier winning the fight, and I didn't think he'd find a finish. I was like, when I saw that, because the line was pretty close on this fight. Collier by decision was plus 300, and Arlovsky by decision was like plus 140. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense because this fight is almost certainly going to decision. And I think it's going to be a close fight. I was like, I can get plus 300 on Collier by decision, which, again, there are some people of the mind that any bet that loses was a bad bet. I think that was a good bet. And I think it should have gone our way, but it didn't. And I also parlayed Mazzani with Levy there for 1 unit. Obviously that lost because Mazzani didn't come through. And then I took a 2.1 unit stab on the Mearshart finish only, scorecards no action, which I thought was a pretty good bet. I mean, it pushed, which is fine. We didn't lose anything on it. We didn't gain anything on it because I thought, and what I should have done, I should have played the Mearshart scorecards no action and also played Yatko by decision. I saw a couple people that did that, and just honestly, it just didn't occur to me. I wish I would have thought of that because I would have done it if I would have thought of it. Because I thought Yatko by decision was the most likely outcome for that fight, but I was like, well, if Mearshart wins, it's going to be inside the distance, and I couldn't see Yatko finding a finish there, so I thought that was a solid bet, and it pushed, so I can live with that. And finally, the thing that saved my bacon here a little bit was Brito wins by TKO round 1. We got that at plus 2,200, which is crazy. Like, a lot of times a round 3 finish, you always get a better price on the round 3 finish than on the round 2 finish and on the round 1, how that works. But sometimes you won't even see a number like plus 2,200 on a round 3 finish for a fighter. And I thought that was just an excellent spot. As soon as I saw that, I think it was the last bet I made before the card started. But as soon as I saw that, I was like, man, I got to put something on that, because I was like, I do think Fili's going to win this fight, but if Brito wins, that's probably how it's going to happen, early KO. And that came through for us, and we picked up 4.4 units. So it still ended up being a small losing night, but it would have been a big losing night if I hadn't taken that little shot on Brito at the end there. Actually, it would have been my biggest losing night ever if I hadn't picked up that 4.4 units on Brito. So that was nice. So yeah, we lost 1.61 units, which I don't love, but we're still in a pretty good spot overall. I tried to go quick there so you couldn't see those other bets. We'll go over those later. We're still in a pretty good spot overall. If we look at our units over on the left there, overall stats, if you look at our units profit, we're at 52.64 units with a 17% ROI. As you can see, we're plus on everything, 11% ROI on straight picks, 1% on props, 37% on parlays. Man, I used to be up at like 60-some%. I mean, parlays are still where I'm doing my best work, but it's dropped down quite a bit. But if we look here, I've been saying for a while that I was expecting some regression, because that can't happen forever. I mean, it was going up and up and up. We were just, a couple downturns, but man, we were just trending up and up and up. And now we're kind of trending downward a little bit. We're seeing a little bit of regression. We were up to like 60. Oh, I was already up to 65 units. Okay. I didn't even know I was that high. I was all the way up to 65 units, and we've dropped down from 65 to 52 in like the last 5 or 6 events. So I don't love to see that, but there are a lot of people who are negative on the year, and we're definitely not negative on the year yet. So we're going to feel okay about that for now. Anyway, let's go ahead and hold on. My computer's, it keeps doing this. It's trying to scan something, whatever. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into breaking down the card for UFC 274. First up, and I'm not even 100% sure that I've got the order right here. I'm going with the order that's on Tapology, so hopefully that's correct. But let me grab a drink here. Just one second. First fight of the night, Journey Newsom versus Fernie Garcia. I'm going to try to keep storytelling to a minimum because, like I said, I'm trying to go quick, but I just want to share this. I actually attended the event where Journey Newsom had his fight that got him into the UFC. It was this event called Final Fight Championship that takes place in Vegas at the Rio. And I think I've told you guys before about this former student of mine from years ago who is now a strength and conditioning coach for some fighters. And one of the fighters that he works with is the middleweight champion of Final Fight Championship. So whenever those guys come to town and he fights, I kind of go hang out with them and stuff. And anyway, so I went to that event and I saw Sean Shelby there. And I remember thinking like, oh, Sean Shelby's obviously scouting somebody, or like, I wonder if he's going to sign anybody from this event. And Journey Newsom fought on that event, and he knocked his opponent out in the first round in like a minute. And then right after that, Journey Newsom showed up in the UFC. So I just thought it was kind of cool that I saw Shelby there and was like, ooh, I wonder who he's signing. And then apparently it ended up being Journey Newsom. But anyway, so Journey Newsom, He's a slight underdog at plus 135. Fernie Garcia can be had at minus 165. I don't feel like I have a super strong read on this fight. Obviously, Journey Newson's had a couple UFC fights already. He's had has he had 2 quick knockouts in the UFC or just one? I can't remember for sure, but Journey Newson he's a very explosive guy. He's really quick. He's a guy who trained Taekwondo at a really young age, which you can see in his style. He throws a lot of kicks, but not just like leg kicks and body kicks. I mean, he'll throw hook kicks and spinning back kicks and all kinds of different things like that. So he can be a pretty exciting fighter to watch, and obviously he does have the power to take people out early as well. Fernie Garcia is a little bit more of like just kind of a standard boxer. Fernie Garcia does put out a lot more output than Journey Newson, and Garcia can be, he can be pretty aggressive, but the way I read it is, I think he's a little bit more disciplined and buttoned up. You're going to hear me use those phrases a lot today, I think, as I break these fights down, but he's a little more disciplined and buttoned up than Newson is. Newson can get a little bit crazy with some of those Taekwondo kicks sometimes, but, I think both of these guys are fairly dangerous. I do think overall Fernie Garcia is probably the better fighter. He's a little bit bigger. Oh yeah. Okay. The reach is here. This is my first time actually using these Tapology images here, so I don't even know what's all listed there. So yeah, this is really helpful. What's going to be even more helpful is the MMA engine when it comes out, though. That's going to be even better than this. But anyway, and yeah, I think Fernie Garcia, he puts out a lot more output. His striking percentage is kind of low, but he attempts, let's see, I have this in front of me actually. He attempts 14.3 significant strikes per minute and lands 5.5 to Journey attempting 8.4 and landing 2.7. So they both have fairly low striking accuracy, but Fernie puts out a lot more strikes and lands a lot more strikes. So I do lean Fernie to win here. Does it go to a decision? I don't know, probably. But like I said, I don't have a strong read on this fight. I'm not really interested in betting it. It's one that I am staying away from. Next fight on the card, we've got Lupi Godinez versus Ariane Carnelossi. I did actually place a bet on this fight. I think it was actually the first bet I placed on the card. I got Ariane Carnelossi at plus 170, and I took her at the right time because I think she's... Oh, okay, it still shows her at plus 170 here. I don't know if these Tapology odds actually update because I think she's at more like plus 140 or something like that now, but I could be wrong. I thought she had dropped a little bit, but I do like Lupi to win this fight. Like, I understand why she's favored, but with her being at minus 200, I just think that's too wide. I think this is a fight that could play out really closely. I think probably, my read on why the fight is lined the way that it is with her being such a big favorite, I think it's probably based on the idea that, Lupi is a good wrestler. She, not only does she have the skills, this is the thing I talk about all the time, not only does she have the skills to get takedowns, but she has the tenacity and the desire to work hard for takedowns. She has something like, I think her stat is like, she gets like 4.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. So that's excellent stat for takedowns. And Ariane Carnelossi only has 25% takedown defense. But if you dig into that a little more, she's been taken down 3 times in 4 attempts. Those are all in the Na Liang fight. All 4 of those attempts and all 4 of the takedowns. And if you remember that fight, and if you don't, go back and watch it because it was awesome. But the Carnelossi versus Na Liang fight was an absolutely crazy, chaotic fight with constant movement. When they were on the ground, it was constant scrambling and changing positions. When they were on their feet, it was constant scrambling for positions, trying to get takedowns. I mean, it was just a very, very chaotic fight where I think Carnelossi kind of got swept up in the chaos of it a little bit and was constantly coming forward when they were on the feet and putting herself in positions where she was easy to take down. Because fighters who are really good with excuse me, with reactive type takedowns, that's really where they do their best work, right? Is when they're able to get a fighter to aggressively come forward throwing strikes, because then you just time that level change. I mean, when somebody's already out of position and putting their self off balance, that's when you can time that level change and that takedown. But that isn't excuse me, sorry. That was gross. That doesn't tend to be Lupi's game with takedowns. Lupi tends to, let's use the use the Loma Lubunme fight as an example. In that fight, Lupi was largely clinching up, tying up with Loma on the cage, looking for body locks, trip takedowns, that kind of thing. That's going to be a more difficult thing to do against someone like Ariane Carnelossi, I think, simply because she's a monster. I mean, without even getting into her skills, I mean, just look at her physically. That's not going to be an easy woman. I mean, these two are both 5'2". So, size wise, stature wise, they're about the same size, but it's going to be hard, I think, for Loopy to be able to. I mean, even with keeping the technique in mind. I mean, obviously, it's not just about strength; it's about technique. But when somebody is as much as a physical powerhouse as Carnelossi is, I think it's going to be hard to get takedowns on her by clinching up, by body locking, by looking for trips and that sort of thing. So, I think that Loopy could have more difficulty getting takedowns here than she typically does. So yeah, I don't, and also Carnelossi's a solid grappler. She can hit hard. I mean, she could potentially land punches and scare Loopy off a little bit here. But yeah, even so, I do think I probably, by way of a pick, I don't even usually do picks, but I guess I would pick Loopy to win here, but I don't think she should be favored at -200. And so I thought there was excellent value on taking Carnelossi at that +170. So I went for it. Next up, we've got Clayton Rodriguez versus CJ Vergara at flyweight. As you can see, pretty wide betting lines on this one too. Clayton Rodriguez is at -275. Come back on CJ Vergara as the underdog at +220. This is also a fight that I don't feel like I have a super strong read on, but just to kind of break down these guys a little bit as far as what they do. Clayton Rodriguez is a dynamic and impressive striker. I mean, he's a guy he's really quick. He's really athletic. He hits really hard. He throws a nice variety of strikes. He's the kind of guy that, if you watch the tape on these two fighters, Clayton Rodriguez is the guy that's going to jump off the screen a little more. He's the guy who definitely is like going to jump out as the bigger prospect of the two, the guy who is more athletic, who is the more impressive fighter all around. CJ Vergara is more so one of those guys who's just a solid gamer. He doesn't jump off the screen as somebody who's blowing your hair back with his skills, but he's very, very tough. He's very, very solid. He's the kind of guy who can kind of slow a fight down, make it gritty and grimy and ugly, and really kind of thrive in that kind of fight. And so I guess I understand why Rodriguez is favored. I do think he's the better fighter. I do think he's the better athlete. But if CJ Vergara is able to kind of crowd him and able to keep from giving him the space that he needs to get his striking game working, if Vergara is able to just apply consistent pressure, keep Rodriguez on his heels, possibly even clinch up with him and look to slow the fight down that way, pushing him against the cage and that kind of thing, Vergara is the kind of fighter who could grind out a decision here potentially. I think I even saw, okay, so he's at +220 on his money line. I looked up his decision line earlier, and I think it was at like +500. I haven't taken a shot on that. And, Clayton Rodriguez might come out here. I mean, he's a dynamic and powerful striker. He might come out here and just knock Vergara's block off. Who knows? But Vergara is a tough guy, and I can see that potential path to victory for him there in just kind of a slow and grinding type of fight if he's able to create that type of fight. So I don't hate a shot on CJ Vergara by decision if you can get it at like +500, but I haven't taken that shot personally, and probably I won't. I think this one's just going to be a stay away for me, but should be a fun fight. Next up, we've got Tracy Cortez versus Melissa Gatto. I think this is an interesting fight. There are so many really interesting matchups on this card. I think this fight should be a lot of fun. I like both of these two a lot, kind of for different reasons, but as you can see, Tracy Cortez is a favorite at -180, Melissa Gatto at +150. And, I think that line mostly makes sense. Cortez is just a solid all-around fighter. She's not known for her striking, but she's got pretty solid boxing. That's not where she does her best work, but she certainly is not uncomfortable there. She is, a very capable striker. Obviously, what she's mostly known for is her wrestling. She's an excellent wrestler. She's able to get takedowns on pretty much everyone that she fights. She's able to, hold people down for long periods of time. She's not necessarily super dangerous as far as finding a finish. She's more so gonna grind you out for a decision. But where this fight could get hairy for her is that Melissa Gatto is, besides being an absolute hoss, like the same thing I said about Ariane Carnelossi, Melissa Gatto is a frightening woman. I mean, her physique is look at pictures of her. Look at her shoulders and her back, and I mean, she is extremely vascular and striated and just scary. And I always say that you can't tell how strong a fighter actually is by looking at them. Some people don't look strong and are. Some people look strong and are not. But I'm willing to bet that Melissa Gatto is extremely strong. She looks like she's got that wiry, farmer strength to her. But anyway, my point was that Cortez is a very good fighter, but not a super dangerous fighter. She's more so process based and going to take you down and hold you down. Whereas Gatto presents danger at all times. And that's why this fight is tricky for Tracy Cortez, I think, is she going to be able to take Melissa Gatto down? Yeah, she probably will. Sijara Eubanks was able to take Gatto down and keep her down for long spells, but eventually that didn't work out for her. Gatto was able to get out in round 3. I think it was in round 3, and she blasted Sijara in the gut with that front kick. And Sijara was getting tired out at that point. But Gatto is not only her Muay Thai looks excellent. I love her striking, but she's also very dangerous with submissions. Opportunistic. She can find a submission from a lot of different angles. In that fight with Sijara Eubanks, she was constantly working for submissions from bottom, constantly looking to work out. So yeah, even though Cortez probably is going to be able to get the takedowns and hold Gatto down, Gatto's not just going to lay there and take it. She's going to be looking to get out. She's going to be looking for submissions. So it is a dangerous fight for Cortez the whole way through, I think. That said, I think I'm going to lean Cortez to win a decision here, but I think Gatto is definitely live for a finish at any time, and that makes for a really interesting dynamic, and it should be a really fun fight. But yeah, I haven't put a bet on it. If I did, I would maybe look at Gatto by submission or Gatto inside the distance or something like that, but no bet from me, at least at the moment. Next up, we've got Andre Fiolio and Cameron Van Camp at welterweight. Obviously, we just saw Fiolio fight really recently. Let's see, where are the betting odds? For some reason, they're not on here. I believe Fiolio is somewhere in the neighborhood of -350. He might even be up at like -380. He's a pretty big. Normally I would have best fight odds on the screen here, but I thought that I could count on Tapology to have these, but they're not on here. But yeah, Fiolio's a big favorite at like -350 to like -380. Van Camp must be plus 300 or something like that. I'm not sure exactly, but something like that. And, I do think that those odds make pretty good sense. We just saw Fiolio knock out Miguel Baeza, like a couple weeks ago or whenever that was. And then if you didn't hear, the reason that he's fighting again so quickly is allegedly Fiolio went and spoke to Dana White and told him, look, dude, I need to fight regularly. That's just, that's one thing I've learned about myself is I need to be getting back in here as often as I can and fighting regularly because that's when I do my best work. So he's like, see what I did to Baeza? Dude, let me fight 5-6 times a year and I'll be doing that more regularly. I'll be able to give you those kinds of performances if you keep me in there. Cameron Van Camp, he's 15-5-1. He doesn't have the greatest level of competition, but not the worst either. I did watch some tape on him. He's a guy who's been going out there and finishing people by submission pretty quickly. But watching his tape, you don't get much because he's going out there and finishing everybody that he's fighting in like a minute or two. But even watching him finish low-level fighters pretty quickly, it's one thing when you're watching tape on a fighter who's going out there and finishing low-level regional fighters quickly and looking good doing it. But even though you're getting like 60 to 90 seconds of footage each time you watch Cameron Van Camp, you can see the weaknesses in his game, even in those moments, things that he's doing wrong against these low-level fighters that he's not necessarily going to get away with against a fighter like Andre Fiolio. He does come out with his chin pretty high in the air and his hands low. He's a little bit loosey-goosey as far as any kind of defense. He's going to be coming out and looking to wrestle, looking to submit Fiolio here. Fiolio is more of a striker, but he's a well-rounded fighter. I don't think that Van Camp is going to be able to take him down and blanket him here. I expect that Fiolio is probably going to be able to catch Van Camp. I mean, especially if Van Camp shoots a couple takedowns and Fiolio is able to shuck those takedowns off and frustrate Van Camp and turn it into a striking bout for a reasonable amount of time. I feel like Fiolio is probably going to be able to find that chin and get a finish in round 1. That's what I'm feeling there. I actually did put a bet on Fiolio even at -320. Oh, I want to give a shout out to Dan Levy. he if you watched Clint's show, Die Hard MMA podcast this week, they had the Council of Dans on there, and Dan Levy shared that he knows Cameron Van Camp. I don't know if he knows him personally, but I mean, Cameron Van Camp is from Dan's area and fought in I don't even know if he's from his area, but he fought in that local regional scene where Dan lives or where Dan grew up or whatever. And so he has seen Cameron Van Camp fight and is somewhat familiar with him. And Dan said, based on his like inside knowledge of the guy, he's like, yeah, this guy doesn't belong in the UFC. And honestly, that minus 350 or whatever, he's like, that's not wide enough. It should be wider than that. So I think I had already made my bet on Fiolio before I heard that, but I can't remember for sure. But if I didn't, maybe that's why I put it down. I forget. But yeah, he said Fiolio should be an even bigger favorite. So that made me feel even better about that bet. But yeah, Fiolio's my pick, certainly. At this point, I probably wouldn't bet it. You could maybe parlay him if you're a parlay person, but yeah, nothing too interesting there, bet-wise. Next up, we've got Blagoy Ivanov versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Y'all know I love the heavyweight fights. I even love the bad heavyweight fights, which this is a fight that, make no mistake, this could very quickly turn into a very ugly, very bad heavyweight fight. It should be pretty exciting for the first little while. Marcos Rogerio de Lima Pesao is one of those guys that I feel like people talk a lot of shit on him, that like he's really bad. And I guess I get why, but he's not really bad in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the fight. And he's actually really good. When I was watching tape on him this time around, I really paid attention to his technique, and he actually has awesome striking technique. He has awesome Muay Thai, until he gasses out in the end of round 1, he actually looks really good. So there's an interesting dynamic to this fight because Marcos Rogerio de Lima is very dangerous early, but Blagoy Ivanov is a guy who has taken flush punches from Derek Lewis and kept coming. I mean, he's a tough son of a bitch. I'm sure those of you watching are aware of him getting, he got stabbed numerous times. You can see that scar on his chest. He got stabbed numerous times and survived that. Not that actually has anything to do with his chin, but it makes for a good story. Like, how are you going to knock out a guy who's been stabbed a bunch of times? But Marcos Rogerio de Lima, even though Blagoy Ivanov is known to have that fantastic chin, chins get cracked all the time. Every person who's been knocked out was a person who's never been knocked out at one point before that, right? So it doesn't mean that Marcos Rogerio de Lima can't come out here and finish Blagoy Ivanov early. That could happen. I think it's unlikely. And I think that, the way this fight is more likely to go is that Marcos Rogerio de Lima is going to come out, put it on Blagoy Ivanov, tire himself out. And you might get a really nice line if you do the live betting thing. You might get a really nice line on Blagoy Ivanov going into the second round, because Marcos Rogerio de Lima is probably going to have a really good looking first round, and then he's going to fall off. And we know Blagoy Ivanov doesn't go anywhere, and he's the kind of guy who will slow a fight down. He will make the fight happen the way he wants it to happen, especially once Marcos Rogerio de Lima is tired as shit anyway. I mean, what's he going to do about it? So yeah, Blagoy is probably going to push him up against the cage, take him down, that kind of thing. So, and I think he will probably be able to find a finish. So, I do like this fight to finish, because either Marcos Rogerio de Lima is going to find that round 1 KO, or I think Blagoy, could it go all the way to a decision? Certainly. But I think, with how tired Pesao gets, I feel like Ivanov is going to be able to take him down, grind on him, land ground and pound, possibly find a submission, or find like a late ground and pound stoppage is kind of what I'm leaning toward. And I forgot to give you the odds. Blagoy is a small favorite at minus 150. Comeback on Marcos Rogerio de Lima is plus 125. Which, I mean, those odds make sense to me. I think the odds look a lot different once we get past round 1, but with how dangerous Pesao is in round 1, I think the fight being lined like that makes sense. Next up, we've got Brandon Royval versus Matt Schnell. Those of you who follow me on Twitter, you might have seen a tweet that I made this week where I was like, this is me watching a flyweight fight, where I was like, wow, that guy's fast. He's got fast hands. That takedown entry was fast, whatever. Like, this is the fight I was doing tape on when I made that tweet, because I realized, like, that's all I was typing in my notes. Like, I feel like I'm really bad at trying to do technical breakdowns of flyweight fights, because they're just fast, and that's like I get so I get so like keyed in on how fast they are that I don't even notice anything else, or maybe it's happening so quickly that my old ass can't even figure out what they're doing exactly. But so yeah, I don't feel like I have the greatest read on this fight, but Brandon Royval is a pretty big favorite at minus 255. Comeback on Matt Schnell is plus 205. I think Royval is the more athletic guy. He tends to be more aggressive. He's going to bring a little more pressure. Matt Schnell, like I said earlier, the whole disciplined and buttoned up thing is going to come up more than once. Matt Schnell is a little bit more disciplined and buttoned up as a boxer. And one thing I noticed while I was watching tape on him is Matt Schnell makes the faces he makes while he fights. If you've never noticed that, go watch some tape on him, and he's always going. It's like Matt Schnell looks like, I made a tweet about that too. Matt Schnell looks like you either said something that he's not quite sure if he can believe, or he's trying to figure out if you just farted. Like he just kind of has an incredulous look on his face while he's fighting. But yeah, Matt Schnell is a solid boxer, but I think that Royval is probably going to be able to overwhelm him just with, he's more athletic. He's quicker. He uses a lot of movement, and he uses kind of weird, unorthodox movement too. He mixes up his strikes more. He uses a more of a variety of strikes than Schnell does, I think. And Royval's solid on the ground as well. So I kind of lean toward Royval possibly being able to find like a club and sub kind of situation late in the fight. But yeah, I don't feel like I have a super strong read on this. Could you parlay? Yeah, minus 255. I would maybe parlay Royval there. I don't know, but yeah, I'm not too interested in betting anything on this fight because typically after I do the tape, like, if I'm going to make a bet on a fight, I want it to be a fight where I came away from the tape feeling like I have a strong read and a strong reason to make the bet. And here I just didn't feel like I had that. So it's going to be a stay away for me. Next up, we've got Macy Chiasson versus Norma Dumont. I'm going to grab a drink here. At featherweight. What do we got for betting lines here? Norma Dumont, decent sized favorite at minus 230. Comeback on Macy Chiasson is plus 190. And I've seen a lot of people really liking Norma Dumont in this spot. I mean, obviously, look at how big of a favorite she is. The odds makers are liking her pretty heavy. The betting public is seeming to like her pretty heavy. And to be honest with you, I kind of don't see it. I think this fight could play out really closely. I think that Macy Chiasson, should Norma Dumont be favored? Sure, I think so, but I don't think she should be that big of a favorite. I think that there's some value on Macy Chiasson here. I see this fight playing out. I think there could be a lot of clinching and cage pushing here. If it plays out at distance, I think Norma Dumont is the kind of fighter that she's very efficient with her striking. And like if you watch was it Aspen Ladd that she fought last? If you watch that fight, the way I would describe that performance is Norma Dumont only does what she needs to do to win the fight. There were long spells in that fight where all she was doing was putting the jab out, but it was working, and that's all she needed to do. She's which is smart. She's a smart fighter who only does what she needs to do to win. But Macy Chiasson is the kind of fighter who's going to make that difficult for her, I think. Chiasson can be, she mixes up her strikes well. She's good in the clinch with knees and elbows. Obviously, she's got that long, lanky frame. I think that she could make it a little bit more difficult for Norma to keep things as disciplined and as simple as she'd like to. And I think that, like I said, I think that this fight could largely play out with a lot of clinching, a lot of cage pushing. Macy looks really good in the clinch. She's got nice knees and elbows from the clinch. I see this as a fight that's going to probably go to decision, and it's probably going to play out really closely. And so I'm actually surprised that the line is as wide as it is. And, am I going to pick Macy Chiasson to win? Maybe not. I do think that Norma Dumont is probably my pick, but as far as Macy Chiasson being a 2-1 underdog, I don't think I agree with that at all. And I did actually make a bet on her. We'll take a look at it at the end here, but I made a small bet on Macy Chiasson by decision at plus 330, which I think is a fantastic line. I mean, if you agree that this fight is going to play out closely, then getting either fighter by decision at plus 330 is kind of like the way I described the Jake Collier Andrei Arlovsky fight. The fact that Collier was plus 300 to go to decision in a fight that I was like, it it's probably going to decision. B, it's probably going to play out closely. I think that there's value in that number. So I did put a little bit on Macy Chase on by decision. Next up, man, there's 15 fights on this card. Next up, we've got Francisco Trinaldo, old man Trinaldo versus Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts in the welterweight division. Real close to coin flip odds here. We've got Trinaldo at -115, Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts at -105. And I do think I pretty much agree with those odds. It's a tough fight to get a really comfortable read on. You know, Trinaldo's 43 years old. He's going to be 44 this year. But I mean, he's still making it happen. You know, he's still out there making it work. Like I see him a little bit like Andrei Arlovsky, where like he's just figured out a way. He knows that he can't necessarily fight exactly the way that he used to, but he's figured out a way to make it work even at this age. You know, he's figured out that he fights at a slow pace. He tends to kind of use that style where he's not doing much for long spells, and then he'll explode forward with big strikes and then kind of rest again. So it's like he understands, look, I'm a 43-year-old man. I got to conserve that gas tank. I got to figure out a way that I can make this work for me. And he has. And so, yeah, Francisco Trinaldo, he's always going to be dangerous here. But was it, I think, the Dwight Grant fight where you could really see that he was having trouble dealing with that reach? He was having trouble figuring out how to get inside. Danny Roberts is a guy who's going to have 4 inches of reach here and 4 inches of height. So Danny Roberts he's the bigger guy. He's younger. He's quicker. He's more athletic. He's lighter on his feet. I see this as the kind of fight where Danny Roberts is probably going to be able to just use his movement, stay on the outside, outland Francisco Trinaldo. And Trinaldo is going to be, you know, struggling a little bit. He's always dangerous because he can lunge in with those big shots and he can land them. But that's kind of how I see it playing out on the feet. Could we see this fight go to the ground and see Trinaldo have success there? We certainly could. So yeah, this is another one that, you know, I agree that with the fight being aligned to that closely, and I don't feel like I have a really strong read on it. I'm going to pick Danny Roberts, but not confidently, and I'm not interested in a bet here. That's what I got for you on that one. Not much. Next up, we've got Randy Brown versus Chaos Williams. And in a funny way, I keep mixing up this fight and the last fight in my head because portions of the dynamic are similar in my mind. So for this fight, it's taking place in the welterweight division. Fairly close line here as well. Chaos Williams is slightly favored at -135. Randy Rude Boy Brown can be had for +110. And part of the reason that I see this as a little bit of the same dynamic is even, you know, we don't have the big age difference going on in this one. Actually, Randy Brown's a little bit older, but Randy Brown is the bigger kind of, not that Chaos Williams isn't quick. He's quick, but I think Randy Brown is the bigger, quicker. I don't want to say more athletic, because there's more than one thing that goes into being athletic. Obviously, Chaos Williams is very athletic. He's very explosive. But Randy Brown's a guy who uses movement really well and mixes up his strikes really well. He can be a little bit unorthodox in the way that he moves. I think that Randy Brown is going to be the better minute winner in this fight, I guess is what I'm saying, which is how I feel about Danny Roberts in the last fight. That's kind of part of where the parallel comes in. So I think Randy Brown is going to have the better movement, probably have the better output, probably be the better minute winner. But Chaos Williams is always, always, always dangerous, as we've seen in his Miguel Baeza fight. I keep forgetting, keep thinking, am I getting the right? Yeah. His Miguel Baeza fight, he found the knockout in round 3, I think it was. And it was just from out of nowhere, just all of a sudden, boom. And that's what Chaos Williams is capable of. And he's capable of that from minute 1 to minute 15 or minute 25, if he ever gets that kind of opportunity. So yeah, it's a dangerous spot for Randy Brown, but I like it to probably go to decision and for Randy Brown to win a decision. If you're going to bet Chaos Williams, you could probably bet him by KO or inside the distance, probably bet him by KO. But yeah, I'm staying away from this one. It's lined closely, and I think there's good reason for it, because I see it as if it goes to decision, it's probably Randy Brown. He's probably going to be able to outwork him. But he's going to be dealing with that danger from Chaos Williams, like I said, from minute 1 to minute 15. So it's always dangerous. And now we are getting into the part of the card where we're seeing them drag out the dinosaurs, which, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I love it. And all of these fighters are younger than I am. So I'm definitely not making fun of anyone's age here, but I'm really excited for this fight. It's a weird fight. Maybe I shouldn't say weird, but I mean, obviously both of these guys are well past their prime. You can make the argument that neither of them should be fighting anymore. Although I'm a big believer in the idea that that's not up for us to decide. Well, look at what Joe Lauzon did his last time out. I mean, this was like 2 years ago, two and a half years ago, maybe something like that. His last fight was against Jonathan Pierce, who was a pretty legit up and comer, and he got him out of there in the first round. Cerrone's recent performances haven't looked that good, but he's had his moments. The problem with Cerrone is he's always been such a slow starter, and that's something that fighters can take advantage of, right? I mean, the story on Cerrone as far as him having a kind of a hard time getting going in round one, everybody knows that at this point, and that's something that's exploitable. I forgot to mention the odds. By the way, yeah, Donald Cerrone is favored at -180. Joe Lauzon, the underdog, at +150. I never like to get too binary in how I break down a fight, but I do see this as a fight where Joe Lauzon stands a really good chance of getting Cerrone out of there in round one, I think. But if he can't, I favor Cerrone more and more as the fight goes on from there. I think I favor Joe Lauzon in round one. As soon as we get into round two, it's a little bit closer. I'm favoring Cerrone a little bit. Once we get into round three, if we get there, I'm favoring Cerrone quite a bit at that point. So it just kind of, it just tips from one guy toward the other as we move on, in my opinion. I did bet Joe Lauzon here. Well, like I said, we'll look at it at the end here. I think it was by KO in round one at +700. We'll check out those details when we get there, but I do like Joe Lauzon to come out hard here and look for the finish, and to potentially be able to overwhelm Cerrone before Cerrone can get going, as we've seen happen to him so many times before. Yeah, and I think that, is there maybe value on Lauzon at +150? Yeah, potentially. But I think if you're going to bet Lauzon, bet him inside the distance, or look at those props. Like I said, I went with that round one prop. I would say bet him inside the distance, look at the round one prop, that kind of thing, because maybe there's some value on that +150, but I think you can get even better value by looking at his most likely paths to victory here. And if you agree with my read on this fight, it could be a good live betting spot too, because if Lauzon does come out and have an excellent first round, but he's starting to tire by the end of the first round, we could get a really good line on Cerrone going into round two. But yeah, I'm just excited for this fight. I just hope, well, I mean, I hope Lauzon finds a finish in round one, because that's what I put a bet on. But I just hope that Cerrone doesn't look totally washed here, even though it would be good for me money-wise for Lauzon to come out here and get that round one finish. I hope he doesn't come out and within 30 seconds just take Cerrone out. And I hope Cerrone at least I hope both of them get to show something, like they're both legends. They're both, how can you not like these guys? I just hope that they both, and I don't know, there's rumors that this will be the last fight for both of them. That may be, who knows, but I just hope they both get to show something here and show that they've still got something, because I love to see that from fighters who are, it's nice. Because if you think about why these guys are still doing what they do, I mean, they've both been doing this for so long. It's kind of all they know, this is the life that they know. They're fighters. It's in them. It's in their essence to be fighters. And sometimes fighters just, it's so hard for them to retire, to quit doing what they're doing, because it's a part of who they are and they don't know what else to do with themselves. And when something is that big a part of who you are, when you're not able to show that, that's got to be really painful. Like just thinking about a guy like Cerrone, if this does end up being his last fight and he just gets blasted out of there in one round without showing anything, I just feel like that's going to hurt him inside for the rest of his life. I don't mean to be overly dramatic about this, but I just hope, especially if it is their last fight, I hope both guys are able to show something and to have a good performance regardless of who ends up winning here. All right, enough about that. And next up, we're dragging out a couple more dinosaurs. Nothing against these guys either. A couple more guys that I've been watching for a long, long time. I remember watching Ovince St. Preux in Strikeforce. I don't know why exactly. Sometimes I make a judgment about a fighter and I don't even really know why I do, but I remember first hearing that Ovince St. Preux was going to be fighting in the UFC. And I remember thinking he wasn't going to be around long. I don't know why. I remember thinking like, yeah, he's going to fight in the UFC. He won't do well. Or not that he wouldn't do well, but just that I didn't see him being somebody who is going to have a lot of longevity in the UFC. And lo and behold, he has had a ton of longevity. He's 39 years old to Shogun's 40. It blows my mind that Shogun is only 40. It just seems like he should be more like 43, 44 or something like that. But anyway, Looking at the odds here, OSP can be had for -240, Shogun at +200. And I guess those odds mostly make sense to me. This is a fight where I have a really, really hard time getting any kind of comfortable read. I mean, obviously these two fought before. It was way back in 2014. It was a little bit fluky and weird. You've probably seen the GIF where Shogun steps on the skateboard. But yeah, OSP found a really quick finish in that fight in 2014. It was fluky and weird. Probably not going to see the same finish again, you know. But it's just really hard for me anyway. It's really hard to feel confident in any kind of read on either of these guys, just as far as where they're at and what they're going to look like. I mean, I rewatched their first fight, and it was so clear how much OSP had changed, certainly because when that fight starts, you see OSP, moving dynamically on his toes, moving in and out, using lateral movement, light on his feet, really with a dynamic style. OSP doesn't really do that anymore. OSP comes out kind of flat-footed and just sort of waits for his moments, like it's definitely clear how long ago that was and how much he has aged since then. And I guess largely my read here, even though they're both older and they're both somewhat washed at this point and are probably a shadow of what they used to be, OSP is and remains, I think, at least to some degree, a fantastic athlete. He was always a fighter. Not that he doesn't have skills, he certainly does, but he was always a fighter where I think that was his number one attribute. Some fighters are so naturally athletic. They're just so quick and so strong and have such amazing reaction times and all that sort of thing that they almost don't ever have to develop high level skills. Certainly they develop skills, but they're able to get away with not having to really hone their skills to the same level as someone who isn't incredibly athletic. And Shogun's a guy, nothing against him, but Shogun's a guy that I would argue has never been a great athlete. That wasn't his great strength. He was a guy who developed great skills. And so at this point in time, when they're both about 40 years old, OSP, has he slowed down some? Like I said, you watch that old fight and he's jumping and he's on his toes. Yeah, you can see a difference in his athleticism, but he's still going to be the far more athletic guy here, I think. And I think that could go a long way toward working for him in this fight. That said, if I was going to bet it, I don't know. I mean, is Shogun worth a shot? I think, okay, so Shogun's at +200. I don't know what his inside the distance line is. I think if you were interested in an underdog shot on Shogun, I would maybe look at him to finish inside the distance, or look at his KO prop or his inside the distance prop. I think there's a good chance that this fight finishes either way because neither of these guys is, super, super durable at this point in time. Yeah, this is a fight where I feel like I'm just going to keep talking and go around in circles. I should probably just move on to the next fight because I don't feel like I have real strong analysis for you anyway. And I'm just going to go around and around. But as far as a pick, it makes sense to pick OSP. I think it just, he's the bigger guy, the stronger guy, probably the more athletic guy. He's a little bit younger. He's a little bit less washed, I think, than Shogun is at this time. But yeah, so I'll pick OSP to win. I wouldn't bet him. Could you parlay him? I don't know. I probably wouldn't. I would just stay away entirely. But if I was going to bet this fight, I would maybe look at what Shogun's knockout proper inside the distance prop is, which I already said. So like I said, I'm just repeating myself at this point. So let's go ahead and move on to the next fight. Oh, and it's another banger, you guys. Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson. I don't know what to say about this fight. So, okay, look at that line. Michael Chandler is -410. Tony Ferguson +320. Just one second. Do I understand why that line looks that way? I do. But at the same time, the narrative on Tony Ferguson at this point is that he's just done for. He's washed up. He's basically a corpse out there. And I don't think that I agree with that narrative entirely, at least not to the extent that that people are clearly agreeing with it to the point that Tony Ferguson can be had for +320. Yeah, Michael Chandler has a lot going for him in this matchup. I mean, Tony Ferguson he's got a lot of fight miles on him. He's got a lot of damage on him, but he's still, he's superhuman. I mean, yeah, the guy always gets beat up. He's gonna look like shit in this fight. Probably he's gonna be bleeding. He's gonna be hurting, but you can't get the guy out of there. could this be when it finally happens? Could this be the fight where, after all the damage he's taken and with how powerful and athletic and quick Michael Chandler is, could this be where we finally see Tony Ferguson's chin just absolutely get blasted? Yeah, that certainly could happen. But if we sort of think about how this fight could play out based on what we know about these guys, Michael Chandler is going to come out quick, looking for a finish. He's an amazing athlete. He's incredibly quick. He's incredibly powerful. He's going to come out looking for that quick finish, most likely. And so Chandler's the guy who's going to be going hard early, but we know that he can slow down. He remains potent and he remains tough, but he certainly slows down a lot. He's not as explosive. He's not as quick. He's not as powerful as the fight goes on. Tony Ferguson is a guy who tends to take a big beating early, but he's still dangerous as the fight goes on. He's still slick. He can find a submission. He can be absolutely covered in blood and half dead in round 3, and he can still submit you. He can still be an effective fighter. So yeah, is Michael Chandler going to be incredibly dangerous early and probably hurt Ferguson early? Certainly. But man, it's hard not to imagine that this fight is going to go long, just because we have seen Ferguson be so durable. And what does this fight look like if we get to round 3? Is Michael Chandler, halfway to death gas, 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way? I mean, is Michael Chandler barely being able to hold on at that point? And is Tony Ferguson wearing the crimson mask, covered in blood, grinning like the maniac that we know he is, and he's like, all right, this is my time. You have made the mistake of allowing yourself to get to round 3 and be tired out with me, Tony Ferguson's crazy ass, standing across from you. Do we get to that point? And if we do we see Tony Ferguson do Tony Ferguson shit? It could happen. And so I don't really like, I'll admit I did put Chandler in a parlay. We'll look at that in a little bit, but I only put like half a unit on it, I think. But man, the more I think about it, I've been thinking about taking a shot on Tony, like just a sprinkle on Tony Ferguson to finish in round 3, because at what these lines are looking like, I do favor Chandler to win, and I get why the line is the way it is, but it makes sense, right? I mean, can you see it playing out that way? Can you see it playing out where Chandler is a ball of muscle and athleticism and energy, and he's going to come out here looking to finish it. And if he can't, he's going to slow down, and Ferguson is going to come more and more alive. I don't know, man. It's interesting to think about. I feel like I have to, I just had that small sprinkle on Joe Anderson Brito by KO in round 1, and that hit for me. Not that one bet has anything to do with another bet, but it's like, I'm feeling good about my decision in that case. Like, I made a good choice as far as a little round sprinkle there. And now that I'm feeling this one and my degen sense is tingling, I'm like, well, maybe this is a good one too. I don't know. Like I said, of course they're not related, but yeah, I'm going to have to at least take a sprinkle on that round 3. I don't know. I'm excited for this fight. And I can't stop thinking about, like, if it does play out that way, just imagine how exciting that's going to be, because who out there doesn't want Tony Ferguson to win this fight, right? Yeah, I'm sure there are Michael Chandler fans, whatever, but if you are a fan of mixed martial arts, how do you not want Tony Ferguson to win this fight? I feel like everybody does, right? Like, if Tony Ferguson if we get into round 3 and Michael Chandler is clearly tired and just doesn't have it anymore, and Ferguson is coming alive, and they're clinched up, and Ferguson he's landing uppercuts and he's landing hooks, and Chandler is, I'm going through it in my head now and getting excited, but like, I'm just imagining like the collective MMA fandom. I'm imagining all of MMA Twitter and all of us just on our feet, just freaking out, screaming so loud that we can hear it all over the world because Tony Ferguson is making it happen. Okay. Anyway, I got to getting a little worked up here. Let's move on to the next fight. So for a pick, I'll go with Chandler. If you're going to bet it, I'd bet Ferguson, maybe that round 3 sprinkle. Whew. Next up, we've got Rose Namajunas versus Carlos Sparza. Oh, it's funny, at the top there it says Carlos Sparza 2. I'm like, oh yeah, because it's a rematch. I was like, oh, is Carlos Sparza the second? Is her mom named Carlos Sparza? No, it's the second fight. Just 1 second. All right, we're making pretty good time. I got to finish up in a few minutes here. Rose, Pretty big favorite at -200. Carla at +165. Obviously, these two have fought before. Carla won, but it was a long time ago. They've both, changed a lot since then. I did rewatch that fight, and um, I was surprised. Rose certainly has gotten better since then, but I was surprised how similar she actually looked. Like I could see that. A lot of times I think Rose only had like 3 or 4 fights under her belt at that time. But a lot of times what we see, if you go to like regional shows and that kind of thing, or even younger, newer fighters who've made it to the UFC, a lot of times what we see from them is unbridled aggression. They haven't learned to sort of calm down and rein it in and that sort of thing. And that's something that I think we saw from Rose in that fight. So that's something that she certainly has worked on a lot. But I mean, you're bound to see that when somebody's only had 3 or 4 fights, that they're just sort of a ball of energy and they're just a little worked up and they need to just like chill out a little bit. But yeah, that's something that Rose definitely has going for her now. We never want to be too binary breaking down a fight, but this is kind of a striker grappler kind of situation. Carla's going to be looking to get takedowns and, hold Rose down and potentially, look for ground and pound, potentially even look for a submission. Rose is going to be looking to keep it on the feet where she can use her striking, and Rose has excellent striking. So, not to overly simplify it, but that's, I think that's largely, and not that Carla can't strike. Like, is she as good a striker as Rose? Certainly not, but she's, reasonably comfortable there. And Rose is a comfortable grappler as well. So it's certainly not, that 100% black and white that if it goes to the ground, it's all Carla, and if it's on the feet, it's all Rose. But, I think it's 2/3 of 2/3 of that is true. So like, it's pretty clear where each fighter should have their advantage anyway. But I did put a bet on Carla Sparza here. She's showing us +165 here on Tapology. This was a couple days ago, but I got her at +190, I think it was. And I thought there was good value on that. I don't put a whole lot of weight into the fact that this fight happened before and Carla won, because it was so long ago that I really do think they are different, largely different fighters. Rose can be taken down, but she's shown a pretty decent ability to get up. And I see Rose as, and this is something that's like, I hate to go with these kind of things that are not really like solid and tangible things that you can really point to, but I just feel like Rose is in her prime right now. I feel like Rose is a special fighter, and I feel like she's experiencing what is her special time. Not that she can't be beaten, she can, but it's hard for me not to lean Rose to win this, just because I do think she's the better all-around fighter. And I just think she's a special fighter right now, and just a special fighter in general. But I think she's having that time where she's in her prime. And yes, that path to victory for Carla is there. Like I said, I did bet Carla. It's not like I don't think it's possible that Carla is going to come out and be able to do Carla things and wrestle her and win a decision. I believe that's a possible enough thing that I was willing to bet it at +190. But that said, in the end, I do think I probably lean Rose. And, we've seen Carla have trouble getting inside and getting takedowns on strikers who have good movement and good footwork and use a lot of lateral movement and that sort of thing. So, I don't know. It's another tough one but yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I do lean Rose to win, but I thought there was value on Carla at +190. Maybe I would even look at Carla by decision. I don't think I've looked at that, but with 5 rounds, we could see a finish here as well. But anyway, moving on to the main event of the evening. For the lightweight championship of the world, Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. Wow, you guys, this is going to be a fun card. This is going to be a really fun fight. I just did a guest spot on the MMA archive with Christopher Negron. We just recorded that last night. And I feel like I'm saying a lot of the same things that I watch. You should definitely watch that show. We talked for 2.5 hours, so I don't know if you've got time to watch it, but I feel like I keep saying the same things in this video that I said in that video, so I don't want to repeat myself in case anybody watches both of them. But it's hard not to talk about this fight. It's hard not to want to look back and talk about each of these guys' careers leading up to this fight. But what I just want to talk about Charles Oliveira a little bit. I just think his career has been so amazing, what he's been able to do. He was a fighter who, at one point in time, he was like a 500 fighter. I don't remember his exact record, but I think at one point in time he was something like 10-8. You know, he was always good, but he won some, he lost some. Like, he was a guy, you know, I've been following this sport for a long time. Some of you have too. You know, Charles Oliveira has been around for a long time. And I think you would, you know, if you've been watching for a long time, I think you would agree that, like, he was somebody who was always good, but he wasn't somebody that was necessarily on the radar as a guy who was going to be elite, as a guy who was going to be a future champion, until like just a few years ago. He just didn't have that kind of aura about him. I don't think, you know, like, he was a guy who was always solid, was going to win some, was going to lose some, and now he's on what, like some kind of 10 fight win streak. And if you see interviews with him, he talks about that he's like, I always believed, you know, I always knew that I was going to be champion. And, you know, fighters need to believe in themselves. They need to have that faith and that belief in themselves, but sometimes it's misplaced, you know, sometimes. And I think sometimes fighters are just saying what they think they need to say, but some fighters also, that guys that are around for a long time and win some and lose some. I mean, look at a guy like Darren Elkins. Like, do you think Darren Elkins believes that he's going to be the champion? Do you think Darren Elkins even 3, 4, 5 years ago believed he was going to be the champion? You know, some of these guys, they fall into just being a company man, just being a roster guy, where they're like, you know what? I am a UFC fighter. I am a little bit famous. I make good money. You know, I'm doing what I love to do. I'm never going to be the champion. I'm never going to be one of the greats at this, but I get to make my living doing this awesome thing that I love to do. You know, I think some fighters just get comfortable with that, and that's fine. They realize, I mean, look at a guy like Clay Guida. Do you think Clay Guida thinks he's going to be the champion? Do you think even 5 years ago he thought he was going to be the champion? I think that, and I'm not even trying to talk shit for guys who like don't think they're going to be champions. Most people aren't. You know, like, if you don't believe you're going to be the champion, you're probably right, and that's okay. You know, especially in America, I think there's a lot of focus on you know, positive thinking and always being optimistic and always thinking that you're special or something. And it's okay to not be special, if that makes sense. So, like, I just think it's awesome that even though Charles Oliveira, a lot of fighters that were in the position he was in, having been in the UFC for so long and having win one, lose two, win two, lose one, you know, like, it would be easy to just settle into that role as like, hey, I'm a UFC fighter and this is awesome. I'm not elite. I'm not one of the best. I'm not going to be the champion, but I get to do this. But Charles Oliveira didn't do that, despite all of the evidence that was coming his way from the way his fights were going, despite a lot of, you know, like, evidence that he wasn't going to be great. He believed that he was, and he kept working for it and kept improving his game, kept rounding out his skills. And now there's absolutely no doubt that he is an absolutely elite and great mixed martial arts fighter. You know, he was always a great submission fighter. He was always a great jiu-jitsu fighter. He continued to improve his game and round out his game. Now he's a dangerous striker, not just a serviceable striker. He's a very good striker. He has excellent Muay Thai. He mixes it up. He uses all 8 limbs. I mean, he can find knockouts. I mean, look what he did to Chandler. Yeah, so I just think Charles Oliveira is amazing. That's why I wanted to go on that little tangent. I think Justin Gaethje is amazing as well. But, I didn't even look at the odds. Oliveira, small favorite, -165, or, you know, moderate favorite, I guess. Gaethje +140. I think those lines make sense. It's hard not to favor Oliveira just with how he's been looking lately and the fighters he's been able to beat and how he's been able to do it. But it's also impossible to break this fight down without taking note of the fact that Oliveira has been caught and hurt in all of his fights lately, basically. Like, he's getting caught early, he's getting dropped, he's getting hurt. And so is that going to happen against Gaethje? Yeah, I mean, it's likely that he's going to get caught and get hurt early. If he gets caught and gets hurt against Gaethje, is he going to be able to recover? He's shown an ability to recover when it's happened in his other fights recently. Is he going to be able to do it again? I don't know. I personally think that there are a lot of variables that go into punches and how they land. You know, as far as how it's thrown, where exactly it hits on the face, on the head, on the chin, whether the person happens to be turning away, how they're standing. I think there's a lot of variables that go into that. And that's why a lot of times I don't buy into chinny narratives, because I think it has a lot to do with how a punch lands and where it lands and that kind of thing. But we don't need to get into that right now. But depending upon how the punch is thrown and the position that they're both in and how it lands, if Gaethje does land that one that's been getting to Oliveira early in his fights, it could finish him. It could be over right there, but it also might not be. It's such a tricky fight to call. It really is, because they're both much more well-rounded than people give them credit for, I think. I mean, like I was saying, like Oliveira has improved his striking a lot. He's still a guy you think of as a jiu-jitsu guy. Gaethje's a guy that you think of as a striker, but he has high-level wrestling in his back pocket. He doesn't look to use it most of the time. He's a fantastic scrambler. He's quick on the mat. He recognizes when he's in a bad position. He has a lot of just kind of awareness and that sort of thing. So I mean, these guys both, they have their area of specialty, but they're also both excellent at the other's area of specialty. I mean, they're both well-rounded fighters that aren't always as recognized for being well-rounded as they should be. But yeah, it's a really, really tough fight to call. And I don't know. I think that I do lean Charles Oliveira, just because I think, they're going to end up clinching, grappling, wrestling at some point. And Oliveira is just so dangerous as far as being able to find the back, or being able to find an arm, or being able to find a knee. I mean, he's dangerous in any position on the ground, because he's not just a guy who specializes in like one submission. I mean, he's able to get all different kinds of submissions from all different kinds of angles. But yeah, this is another one. I don't have a strong read here. I don't know how you can really. It's such a dynamic fight with two really amazing and dangerous fighters in their prime right now. Like, this is just, we're lucky as fans to have this matchup. I'm more so just looking at that than I am at even looking at trying to break this fight down or pick who the winner is or find a good bet. I'm just going to stay away from it from that perspective. I'm just excited to watch this fight. I'm excited to be an MMA fan at this time during the sport. And I'm excited that we get this event and this fight, because it's a treat. And it's going to be really, really fun. And I think I'm going to leave it at that, because yeah, I guess I'm going to pick Oliveira. I don't know. I honestly, it's practically a coin flip to me. I really don't know. And I don't even want to pick a winner here, because I just want to sit back and enjoy this fight. And I think that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the bets that I had for this fight. I may add more. I'm not sure. But we'll take a look here real quick. Yeah, I gotta. My wife needs the room for her podcast in a second here, so I gotta hurry up. I put 1 unit on Carlos Sparza at plus 190. Like I said, I think there's good value on that line. I think that line's gone now. But I put 2 units on Andre Fiolio at minus 324, just because I just think that he's the much better fighter, and I don't know that Cameron Van Camp even belongs at the UFC level. So it's a big line to be hitting, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I put a unit on Ariane Carnelosi at plus 170. Like I said, that's pretty much just a value shot. I maybe kind of lean Loopy to win, but I think the fight could play out really closely. So that seemed to have value to me. I put a unit on Cerrone and Lauzon to go under 2.5 rounds at minus 145. And I also put a little over a unit on Cerrone and Lauzon. Fight doesn't go the distance at minus 110. And I probably wouldn't have made both of those bets, but I made the fight doesn't go the distance bet first. And I didn't even remember making that bet. I've talked to you guys about how weird my memory is. I made that bet without even remembering doing it. And then I made the under 2.5. And then I saw the other one and I was like, well, maybe I won't track that one, but I do think this fight finishes. So I went ahead and put it on there, whatever. Anyway. And then I did sprinkle that Lauzon wins by TKO in round 1. I put 0.2 units on that at plus 700. I did put a little bit of a half unit parlay here. I put Chandler, Royval, and Cerrone Lauzon under 2.5 rounds. I don't love that. I took that minus 400 on Chandler. I don't love that. That's why I went kind of small on that one. But it's one of those that if I could take it back, I probably would. And now that I've thought about it more, I don't know if I would have put that parlay together, but I already did, so can't change it now. Michael Chandler and Tony Ferguson over 1.5 rounds. That's something that I didn't talk about, but that can be had for minus 150. And I just don't see this fight ending quickly. Chandler's a guy who can find those early knockouts, and like I said, it's not like Ferguson's chin might not get cracked at some point here. Maybe this is when it happens, but we have no reason to believe that until it does, and everything we've seen from Tony Ferguson, everything we've seen from Michael Chandler makes me believe that this fight will go over 1.5. And I think there's pretty good value on that. I also put 1.55 units on Ivanov and Pesao to not go the distance. And then, like I said, I put that little bit on Macy Chase by decision at plus 330. I put a weird amount on that, like 0.31. I wanted to put enough on it to win a unit, so that's what I did there. But so yeah, we've got a bunch of time props, a bunch of totals here, and then only those 3 straight bets. I don't know that there's anything else I'm going to put. There's not really anything else that I've got my eye on right now necessarily, but yeah, I don't know. There could be more, but that's what we've got right now. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. For those of you who made it this long, thank you so much. Oh, I forgot I was going to do this at the top of the show. I forgot to show. I've got my Fight Nerds and Dirty Gamblers are my people shirt. If you follow me on Twitter, you've probably already seen. I made an online store. If you look at the description below the video here, I think the link for it is in there. I've got some t-shirts and mugs and stuff that are pretty cool, just like Fight Nerd stuff. I'd love it if you'd check that stuff out. I also made it dirt cheap. Like, I'm not trying to make money on this stuff. I'm just trying to get some cool stuff out there and get my brand out there a little bit, I guess. So I literally set the prices so that I'm making like 20 cents on stuff. So yeah, just check it out because the prices are very reasonable. But yeah, check me out on Twitter at Erik Bets Fights. If you haven't, please like and subscribe here on YouTube. I'm also at Instagram, Erik_Bets_Fights. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I really appreciate those of you who check out what I do and appreciate what I do. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to share it out there, spread the word, help me out a little bit. As always, I'm going to end with this. I am Erik with Erik Bets Fights, reminding you to play it smart, play it tight. Let's grow those bankrolls, y'all. Have a great night and enjoy UFC 274. Take care, y'all.